Good morning, everyone. Today we will be learning about the ruminant digestive system. To start off, does anyone know how many stomachs a ruminant, such as cows, deer, goats, sheep, and elk, have? If you answered 4, you would be incorrect. Ruminants actually only have one stomach with 4 major compartments. Does anyone know off the top of their head what those compartments are? Well, if you said the rumen, reticulum, omasum, and abomasum, you would be correct and win absolutely nothing. And here we see a diagram of the 4 compartments in a cow. Let's go over these components one at a time. First is the rumen. The rumen is located on the animal's left side. It acts as a fermentation vent for the unchewed food the animal swallows. The microbes in the rumen break down the cellulose so that it can be regurgitated and chewed mechanically. The rumen can hold over 25 gallons of material and is the largest compartment, being about 50% of the total stomach. Next is the reticulum. The reticulum is in front of the rumen, close to the heart. It is in a pouch-like shape, and the lining resembles a honeycomb formation. The reticulum is separated from the rumen by a thin flap of tissue, and since they are so close together, whoever named these things decided to mash the 2 names together, like any good English-speaking person would, and call them the reticulorumen. The reticulum is also where ruminants get hardware disease. Hardware disease happens when the animal swallows a sharp metal object that pierces the lining of the reticulum. In fact, any dense or heavy object that the animal swallows falls into the reticulum. This is also where rumen magnets end up. The reticulum is followed by the omasum. The omasum is on the right side of the animal and is right behind the reticulum. The omasum is also globe-shaped. It is often called the Bible or many plies due to the fact that it has folds of tissue which resemble the pages in a book. The reason for these folds is to provide a large surface area to absorb as much water as possible from the food. After the omasum comes the abomasum. The abomasum is the 4th and final compartment in the stomach and is connected to the small intestine toward the rear of the animal. It is also called the true stomach because it is most like a human stomach. It has hydrochloric acid and other digestive enzymes that help with breaking down the final product. The abomasum also has a stomach lining like us humans do, which helps continue absorbing nutrients. After the abomasum comes the small intestine, cecum, and large intestine. The small intestine is about 20 times longer than the animal. It is split into 3 parts, the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. The duodenum's function is to allow liquids secreted by both the liver and pancreas into the small intestine to be digested and removed. The jejunum's function is to absorb carbohydrates into its lining. The walls of the jejunum are covered in villi, which are finger-like projections that increase surface area to absorb nutrients. All 3 sections of the small intestine have villi, but they are longest here in the jejunum. After the jejunum comes the ileum. The ileum's purpose is to absorb vitamin B12, bile salts, and whatever the jejunum leaves behind. This is also the section that joins to the large intestine, and at that junction there is a valve which prevents material from flowing back into the small intestine from the large intestine. But wait, there's more! Before the large intestine, there's the cecum. The cecum is basically a pouch between the ileum and large intestine. This pouch acts as a storage area to allow bacteria to continue digesting cellulose. Finally, we enter the large intestine. But, as with any major organ, it has different compartments. These are the spiral colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, the rectum, and the anus. The spiral, transverse, descending, and sigmoid colons all have the same function, but are separated by how they are positioned. The spiral colon, in humans known as the ascending colon, moves from the cecum toward the front of the animal. An almost 90-degree turn occurs, and then it switches names to the transverse colon as it begins moving across the animal from left to right. Yet another almost 90-degree turn happens to turn back toward the rear of the animal, and it switches names again to become the descending colon. The sigmoid colon is at the end of the descending colon and acts as a tapering point from the rest of the colon to the rectum. The overall function of the colon is to extract water and salt from solid wastes, as well as to ferment the food much like the rumen. Unlike the small intestine, the colon does not play a major role in absorbing nutrients. The sigmoid colon ends at the rectum, which is really just a storage area for the feces. When enough feces build up in the rectum, It forces the walls of the anal canal to open, and the feces then enter the anal canal and pass out of the body through the anus. Hopefully now you know, and most importantly, remember the 4 components to a ruminant stomach, as well as the parts of the large and small intestines. Just in case you forgot, let's do some review. Ruminants have one stomach with 4 compartments. They have the rumen, reticulum, and both together are called the reticulorumen, omasum, and abomasum. The whole stomach's purpose is to break down the food with some nutrient removal mixed in. The small intestine has 4 parts: the duodenum, jejunum, ileum, and cecum. The small intestine's role is to absorb and break down nutrients from the food. The large intestine has 6 parts: the spiral colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, and anus. Its major function is to remove water and salt to prepare for ejection through the anus. Thank you for listening attentively, and don't worry, if you think you won't remember what I've taught you, there will be a test on it that will be sure to jog your memory.